that's the state that the church is in, to where she is calling the shots.
Now, you talking about Eve, or are you talking about the woman?
The spirit of Eve is in the church, because the church still is the daughter of Eve. She's a daughter that has.
All right, my people of faith, let's take another walk. We're having a discussion about Eve inside the church, or the woman inside the church representing Eve. I am with my brother. I guess it would be considered a special guest. I'll leave the description. I'll leave the notification in the description. All right.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Just tell me what you feel about this here. A daughter is born of a woman, and a woman imparts in her ways, her concepts, her vision of how life should be. That daughter carries on that vision through her childhood into her adulthood, until she meets this man. He comes in with a totally different philosophy. This philosophy kind of caters to, it kind of gives her a different way of looking at things, and it intrigues her, so she begins to gravitate towards him, to the things that he's basically saying. And his philosophies and the way that he talks, it intrigues her. And she begins to gravitate towards that. She likes being around his teaching. She loves being around him. And she develops a relationship with him through his methods and things that he talks about. So she develops a relationship with him, and she makes the decision to commit to him because he asked her for her hand in marriage.
Now, wait. Now, is this Eve in the church, or this is actual?
I'm using a illustration here.
Okay.
I'm trying to draw this picture up of this woman that was raised a certain way, comes in contact with the man that's talking differently. She begins to receive what he's saying. It's totally contradictory, or it's totally different from what her mother taught her, but she's intrigued by it. She decides to make the decision because he already offered her hand in marriage. He already proposed to her.
So let me see if I can tie it. So I'm not going to say her foundation, her upbringing is within question, because she's seeing something seeing it from a different perspective than how she was taught, how she was raised, and what she come to know to that point.
Right.
It's different, it's unfamiliar, but it's also intriguing.
Right.
They catch their attention. Okay.
Yep,
So it's
exactly.
like Moses in the burning bush. Okay, all right.
Right. So he offers her hand in marriage, and she says, yes, I will, because she's intrigued by the direction that he's going in. The promises that he made her, he showed her the way, what's ahead. That future looks more brighter than where she is at the present moment. So she takes his hand in marriage, and she continues on with him on the journey, walking with him. And she has a friend. This friend
like
is
a girlfriend, or?
Yeah, girlfriend. She has a girlfriend that she pretty much kind of came up with, because that's how they actually connected back in the day. They connected through the philosophies of teaching that her mother gave her. Her friend was able to identify with that because that's how she was taught. So they grew up together. But she gets married, so when she gets married to this guy, their friendship kind of strays a little bit. They're still friends, but the more she's hanging out with the man in her life, because remember, when you get into a relationship and it's brand new, especially in marriage, or if you're getting serious with someone, you kind of spend more time with that person you were in a serious relationship with more than you hang out with your girlfriends. You kind of start to fall away from that a little bit, slowly but surely.
Two different avenues.
Exactly.
Single life versus a
Being
commitment.
married, yeah, commitment. And the process of that, her friend comes to her and on a periodic basis or consistent basis, telling her, "I miss your friendship. I miss us hanging out together. I miss us doing things together. You changed. You're not the same anymore. You. It's like he got you brainwashed where it is that now you don't even realize.
We don't do what we used to do.
Yeah, we don't do what we used to do. We don't hang out anymore. And you've changed. So in the midst of that, the woman that's in the relationship, she's hearing what her husband is saying, and she's agreeing with it. She's all in for it. She's totally sold out. But the more and more her friend talks to her, she begins to start feeling a little maybe guilty or a little funny, and start considering like maybe I kind of changed in a way that I can't necessarily have my friends in the world. Because here's one thing that sticks out. The husband tells her, he tells his wife that I'm not trying to control you. This is you have the free will to do what it is you want to do. But if it's up to me and you're asking me, I'm saying to you that being a friend of being her friend is going to kind of conflict basically what we got going on, because there's a certain path that we're going down, and the more and more you spend time over there with her, it's going to pretty much come against what we have established.
I can see the conflict about to happen.
And this is why he said to his wife, I don't really think that you could be friends with her, because your friend is an enemy of what it is that we're establishing.
Yeah.
It's a constant speaking against what you and I are established. The strong, solid foundation we have can easily be torn apart if you continue on that path hanging out with her.
It may not start off as the intention. It becomes the intention the more that the single person or the single perspective tries to force his way to be the center. Mm-hmm. The girlfriend may not be starting off intentionally, okay, I'm trying to divide between, I'm trying to get us back to what we used to be, where we was hanging out, where we was girls. That meant she may come in and say, like, I'm not trying to destroy or disrupt what y'all got going. But if she says it more than once that he's trying to change you, now her mission is to divide and conquer, because she's not respecting what's newly established.
Right.
This is what, if I think I have an idea where the problem is with the church, what starts with Eve. If the commandment came to Adam, or came to both, Eve had the authority then to say, I'm content with God, versus saying, this is good to eat. Just like the wife can say to the girlfriend, you're right, I have changed. I made the decision to change.
Right.
That's why I got married, because I made the decision to change. And I'm no longer the same as your girl to girl. I will always be a friend, but I'm not your girl to girl, because I have changed.
Right. And
there's nothing wrong with that. But if the girlfriend could come in and say, like, you have changed, and the wife is condemned by it, she's going to always be torn between her girlfriend and her husband. And she's only going to be stretched for so long. Anyway, all right.
So now let's bring the point that I'm making here concerning the woman, the husband, and her friend. God tells us that to be a friend of the world
is to be an enemy of his.
To be an enemy of his. And why does he say that? He says that because the world has a way of, they have their own perception of life and life more abundantly compared to what God's view is. So if you are a friend of the world, then it's a conflict. Like you said, there's a conflict there of you trying to either being pleasing to the world or being pleasing to God. You can't have it both ways. Either you're going to love one or you're going to really love the other. One is going to grab your attention more than the other. And God is not a God of competition. He says that I am a jealous God. Jealousy means his jealousy is not the jealousy that we know it as. It's
not Satan's version of jealousy.
His is he is intolerable to rivalry. He will never settle for being second.
I mean, why in that manner, if I may tie in, why should he have to when he is the highest? And I think this is the problem with let's go here with the church and why they have fallen asleep and became lovers of someone other than God, because love is not number one. Right. If love was number one, then that means God would be number one. That means you're not siding with the enemy. You're going to live and die for love, versus to say forget love. I'm done with love. Love don't live here no more, and all that. Now you're basically saying that the enemy looks better, or the grass looks greener
on the other side. Yeah.
So let me go across over there. Okay, I'm sorry.
Right. So this is the issue that the church is facing now. Jesus came along, did what he did to redeem the church from the fall of Adam and Eve. This is what the scriptures tells us. So he's done that, wiped that whole slate clean, and began to actually introduce us to a new way. It goes back to what I was saying earlier concerning the woman meeting a man, and she's listening to him, and what he's saying is intriguing. It's different from what she was taught from her mother. The mother represents Eve. She's the mother of all creation. So therefore, the philosophies of Eve, this, I want this, even though God doesn't, he never told me that I could have it. He told me, matter of fact, I couldn't have it. But it's something that I wanted. I wanted more than what God was basically giving. This is the reason why you hear the scriptures say, for the love of money is the root of all evil. Not money itself is evil, but it's the love of it. Wanting more than basically what is you're supposed to have at that present moment. With the philosophy of Eve, though, what I said, the woman is the bride. I'm talking about the bride of Christ to bring it home. I'm talking about the church. The church wants what she wants. Okay? She's heard from her husband, which is Christ. She's also hearing from her friend, which is the world. She's in conflict of which one is she's totally sold out. So she's 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And this is the state of the church. I'm taking on, Christ is basically giving me an option, a way out of that which I believe, what I've known. But what he's saying is starting to get to the point where it's not as much as intriguing than what I've learned from my mother. So what I was saying earlier about Christ had paid the way for us to be delivered from that, the church wants to seem to go back to her old ways, which makes it difficult for her to really be in connection with her husband. And this is why you hear the scripture say, when he gathers his people together, many shall say to me, Lord, Lord. And then he also says to them, I never knew you, depart from me. That not knowing you is basically from a natural standpoint of building a relationship with someone, and they begin to make changes that actually contradicts the flow of your relationship. That's somebody you can't identify with that person.
And for those who are listening, if you don't know like the actual story about Adam and Eve, they don't have the consciousness that we have. Before the fall, before the disobedience, they didn't have the consciousness that we have. We understand good and evil. They only knew good. Right. So if God gave an order, or God said do something, there was no rivalry. There was nothing there. It was just all good. Mm-hmm. So there was nothing to compare or to compete against God until competition was made available. This is what the fall of man was all about. They made competition acceptable by accepting another offer. The enemy, Satan came in, Lucifer, who fallen from grace, who turned into Satan. He gave them an offer. The offer was, does God not know if you take of this tree, you become a god of your own eyes? That's the offer that he gave to Adam and Eve. Regardless who took what, when they took it, doesn't matter. This was the offer. Now let's fast forward to now. You got a husband and wife in the household. The husband, let's say the wife is willing to submit to the authority of the husband. So the husband, she believes that the husband has the foresight or the provision for what's best for the family, the direction. All right, so he's walking up into things of right, or that's of love, that's of joy, that's of peace, and he's not leading his family to torment or fear or pain and all that stuff. But then here comes the enemy with a proposition. He may not come at the man with, that woman over there, you can sleep with her, because that man may know he had made a solidified decision that is off the board. I'm not going to touch another woman. But the enemy can come in through another way. He can come in through, look at that woman on the TV screen. Look at the woman through the magazine. Now, we hear in the church who started the fight, who started the war between the husband and the wife, where the woman is uplifted and she's towering over the man now in society's perspective, or is it the man's fault because he said that she was no good as a wife? She's good as a roundaway woman. She's good as I don't have to respect her. She ain't nothing but this. To the fact is that I don't want nothing to do with her at all. She's not respectful at all. So who's at fault? Let's put the blame where the root deserved to be. Satan started it all. But until the thief is recognized as the thief, he will continue to deceive.
Right.
And the household will never be able to stand as one. So before my brother continue, I wanted to tie that in, because there's a coin flip who's at fault between the man and the woman. They're both at fault if love is not the center point. They're both at fault if love is not the center point as an individual, let alone collectively. They're both at fault. Until they come centered, making love number one, by all means, then God is not the head of their life. Their mouth may confess Jesus is Lord or God is God, but their heart is far from him, because love is not number one. That means their heart is serving to someone else. All right.
That's good right there. Because when you look at it saying all of them are at fault, we know that to be true because all three of them were judged by God.
Yeah.
If one was not in fault, then God would not have dealt with them
Separately in judgments. Yeah.
And then when you look at the judgment, that's a whole nother topic within itself.
Okay.
Because that actually opens the door to three different situations in which God basically breaks down the judgment of what it is that they have. Now, I would say this, and I want to be careful, tread on very thin ice, because I understand that what the church is made of today, it's a great percentage of the church is made up of women. But I want to throw a statistic out there too, and come in, James, and expound on this. I think we had a conversation about this before. But statistics shows that maybe there's like 90% of women that's in local assemblies. You have a 50% divorce rate within the local assembly. And it came out not too long ago that 75% of divorces are initiated by women. Do you have any idea of why that's so?
Well, I can go two ways, and I'll make it brief. You have the woman her heart or soul has been invaded with the world, or slept with the world, or she has the knowledge or consciousness of the world. And then you can also say that the man has the knowledge, the consciousness, the exception of the world inside of his soul. Mm-hmm. If the soul consists of the mind, will, emotion, intellect, and imagination, that's 5 different attributes of the soul. Mm-hmm. And if all those attributes is not like solidified or established inside love, that means they're up for a rightful takeover. That means if anything other than love can come in and take over. So if there's we said 75%?
75%, that's of the initiating.
Okay, now you said that's woman.
Yes.
If there's 75% of women is initiating the divorce, let's say like, okay, they're not happy and they decide to say like, I'm calling it quits. Regardless of the reason, they calling it quits. Then that means 25% the man is responsible for it. So that means 25% of the men, or 25% of the man's consciousness is not in his rightful place as authority. The woman will follow the man regardless, right? Regardless if you're right or wrong, we've seen it. It's fact. If the man, he's doing something he shouldn't be doing, the woman will follow him for that because he has power. If the man doesn't utilize his power, 25% of him, if you don't use 25% of his power towards good, then 75% of the women is going to leave him. That just from that perspective. But 75% is a very alarming rate of women wanting to vacate marriage. But you're basically saying 75. Man has given them 75% of the reason why not to stay. There's nothing greater than love, and I'm willing to guarantee you this. Love have came in. No, I'm sorry. The man has vacated his position in authority of love. That's why I believe he is the head, whatever, of the household. Because for Satan to come inside the house, he has to go through the man. He may go through the woman to get to the man, but he has to go through the man for him to make the whole decree. What the man says goes. If he says this, it goes. The woman may object and may walk away. She will come to a point within herself, regardless she face-to-face admitted, but she will come to a point where he was right because he is ahead. But if that man is reluctant to take his position of authority, 25% of him, she has 75% of a reason to walk away. That just being objective, being the other side of the perspective of a marriage. I've never, let me put this on record, I've never been married. I don't know nothing about it. But I do understand the war between Jesus and Satan. I do understand that. And his love versus fear. Anyway.
That's what you just basically said is the easy way.
Okay.
That's the same as saying when Eve did what she did, we will say, well, where was Adam in the midst of all of that?
Okay.
Why didn't he cover her? Why didn't he protect her? That's the easy way. But we got to keep in mind that she also was judged.
She had her place.
One scripture said that it was not the man that was deceived, but it was the woman that was deceived.
Okay.
Now, in that deception, let's bring it to today's society. What we're really talking about here is understanding where the church is and where her desire lies. Is her desire really and genuinely to please her Lord, which is her husband, her God, her Savior? Or is it to please herself? Because remember, the scriptures never tells us that Adam was not on his position. It just said she wanted something. She wanted something that was said. Whether it was said to her personally or not, the Bible doesn't say. But it was someone that was talking to her, and they were sharing some things with her. A lie.
Yeah.
And she believed the lie enough to say, I want that. She grabbed that, and not only did she grab it, she gave it to her husband, which, by the way, this is where Adam comes into play at. So to deal with it in a way to understand it really without actually sugarcoating it or saying it's his fault or it's her fault, let's look at the dynamic. The enemy talked to her. She received what the enemy said, and she took that what the enemy said to her husband. Now, what she did between her and Satan, I will honestly say it's about the want. Now, I'm wanting something that I know I should not have. And this is where we get the message. I want to be happy. It's about my happiness. I'm pursuing happiness. Regardless if it goes beyond that, what God has established for me to have, I want more. We don't talk about that in the church. The church doesn't talk about it because it's actually presented in a way that it's okay to want more than what God wants us to have, whether we want to agree with that or not. Go ahead.
Just so somebody can understand, or to make it more relatable to a modern situation. Let's say like you're married or you're in a situation and neither one of y'all know God. One decides to hear something of God. Now the foundation, neither one of y'all. The foundation is neither one of y'all know God, so y'all have no knowledge of Him at all. But one hears a witness of Him, and they got intrigued. So that one takes it to the household to share with the other. One is accepted to it because they're sharing it. The other one may not be as equally as receptive because they didn't hear it possibly themselves. This is the opposite side, or this is actually another way of how families get torn apart too, from the good perspective or the blessing perspective. The curse perspective is what Andre is talking about, like how if Adam was in his position, if Adam is in his position and Eve was supposed to be in her position, which is to defend the law. The law was, God said don't touch it, that was it. Nothing more should be acceptable. So this goes to say to the woman, if the household is, we want the blessing of God, well then that should be the law. Anything that comes up against that, she should be totally in disagreement towards. If she's accepted to it or gives it an ear to listen to, she's becoming just like Mother Eve. Which is to say, God doesn't know what's best for us. And more than likely, she have taken the heart of the world and made it her own heart. Or, when she came to God, she never really gave up the heart of the world. Totally. Maybe in some parts or some areas. But she still haven't really declared her whole soul, mind, will, emotion, intellect, and imagination for love. All right.
Okay. And I don't want this to come across as being harsh towards the woman. But we have to understand who we are in Christ. He's coming back for a bride without spot or wrinkle. You hear we read scriptures about not being deceived. Examine ourselves to see if we be of the faith. Seeing if we're lining up as being that perfect bride for him. Because that's what he's coming back. He's coming back for a perfected church. He's not coming back to a church with spot or wrinkle. He made that perfectly clear. Because that spot and wrinkle cannot go into that place in which he's established that's actually built on love. When you really read the story behind the other side that we're trying to make it to, it's a picture of a oneness of a people under God. God being with them loving on one another. That's why the command of Christ tells us to love God, and then the second command is to love one another. Because if we actually begin to operate in that today, that's something that we will carry on to the other side. And that's what this whole new birth thing is about, is reconditioning us from the way of unforgiveness, fear, doubt, all these things that hinders us from basically walking in the perfection of forgiveness. We can't because we hold on to what the world tells us. If they hurt you, then why would you forgive them? They ain't gonna hurt you again and things of that nature. So it basically hinders us from walking in love because that forgiveness pulls us away from love.
So that is to say, if the wife hasn't totally let go of the world, or if the husband hasn't totally let go of the world, they will bring the worldliness into their marriage or the relationship, which is going to be it's going to be a split, because it's designed. The spirit of the world is designed to destroy unions, particularly covenants. So if God is coming back for a church without spot, wrinkle, or blemish, then that means the other side can't be allowed inside of us as individuals.
Right. Because we're the house of God, the
Okay.
household of God. God dwells within us. And I'm glad that you keep reminding me so that I can make it known. When I'm saying the woman, I'm not talking about just women in general. I'm talking about the man and woman, because the man and woman makes up the body of Christ.
Then it makes up the bride
Makes
for
up
Christ.
the church.
Okay.
Exactly. So it goes both ways. So when we look at the submissive part, I want the women to understand that yes, the Bible does tell the wife to submit, but I want you to also understand, if you read above that particular passage, it says, submit yourselves to one another. So it's not only the woman is submitting to the man, but the man is submitting to the woman. And Jesus Christ is a prime example, because he submitted himself unto death, even unto death, for the sake of the bride. So he submitted himself unto God for the sake of the bride. The wife, the bride, which is the church, submits herself to Christ unto God. You can't go to the Father except through the Son. So by submitting to the Son, you're submitting to the Father, because they are one.
Okay. Now, to make this more relevant to an individual, this is the reason. This is the very significance and importance of Jesus. Why he is a distinction or distinguished from any other God or any other theology or whatever, because there's no justification for evil other than a sacrifice. There's no atonement of wrong. I mean, if how about this? If like I said, if you have a union and y'all together, will it be acceptable to bring somebody in your house that's going to destroy both of y'all? I mean, it's gunpoint. I mean, literally come in with the gun, cock loaded. Is it acceptable for a person to come in that say, all right, I'm about to do what I want to do to both of y'all? Mm-hmm. It's unacceptable. Right. So this is how God feels about his tolerance towards sin. It's unacceptable because, like I said, love is the highest. There's nothing greater, there's nothing more powerful, there's nothing more fulfilling than love. So if love is going to be number one inside that individual's choosing, then they have to come to the decision saying, like, anything that comes up against love is unacceptable. Now you have the mind of Christ. And now we can understand the perspective of why Jesus was sent. Jesus was sent to make atonement of sin, that we can have this love again. Mm-hmm. Remember, Adam did what he did, or Eve did what they did, and decision was made. I mean, the judgment was made. But Jesus came to right that wrong. No other religion, or I'm not going to say no other religion, but no other God is offering that atonement. And I can understand why for a person it's hard to receive Jesus, because there's no physical evidential proof that whatever. This is why for you to receive him, you have to receive him through spirit. So it would take a witness of such this conversation, and somebody is intrigued